It's time for Mac Break Weekly. Renee Ritchie is here, Andy Anako too. It's kind of a year-end episode. We're going to look back at what was a terrible year, I think we all agree, 2020, but turned out pretty good for Apple. It began with the first tremors of COVID-19 early on in January and ended with Apple Silicon and an amazing M1 chip. Apple's no good, very bad, but somewhat productive year next.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twit.
This is Mac Break Weekly, episode 746, recorded Tuesday, December 29th, 2020, the year in review. It's time for Mac Break Weekly, the show where we get together with my Mac friends, my little Mac friends, and talk about the latest news from Apple. We've lost one of our little Mac friends to the fruit company.
Yes.
Lori Gill has got a much better job writing for Apple's YouTube channel. So it's just the three amigos this week. Andy and Anako, good to see you. Happy holidays. Did you have a good Christmas?
Oh, had a great Christmas. As a matter of fact, so because of like the reduced circumstances, I realized that, well, here's how much money that I normally put in the budget for like Christmas. And because oftentimes it involves, I'm going to go to New York and spend like the day with friends and see the festooneries. And so I decided to spend like 1/3 of that amount on the biggest Christmas feast I have ever like
But it was
put
just
together.
you all by yourself eating a giant feast?
Well, that was the plan. So for breakfast, I had like mini pastries that I bought at the market. For lunch, I made myself a salmon steak with a
nice
quinoa and walnut salad.
Sous vide, I trust.
Oh, of course,
yes.
It's perfect. And then I had like a pork roast I was going to be making for like second dinner, like at 7 or 8. But by 4 or 5 in the afternoon, I had finished cleaning the kitchen. I'd also had like the better part of half of a pumpkin pie.
Passed out, drooling under the tree.
and luckily I still had like half of a pizza from like my Christmas Eve pizza left over.
That's good.
So
enough.
I'm like, you know what? I think I'm just going to be on the sofa. I'm going to eat pizza and I'm going to binge watch.
I'll ask you about your TV viewing over the holidays in just a second. But we also want to say hello to Renee Ritchie, amigo number trace. Hello, Renee.
Hello, Leo. You haven't lost me to Big Fruit, and you won't, not even in the season finale of 2020.
Oh,
and
my God.
Can I just say I really hope there's no after-credit scene?
You think that Linda Carter showing up for no apparent reason with a brand new name, Listeria? No, it wasn't Listeria. Asteria wasn't perfect.
You can't tell people this, Leo. They haven't seen it yet. They've only like 3 people can afford it. In Canada.
Spoiler alert! It wasn't a spoiler. It was bizarre. Okay.
But it was a nice touch. So long as it's not like the way that they did, like there was like a Munsters reboot where the new Herman Munster takes a job as a waiter and they serve a table of guess who, like all the original cast. And it's just nothing but like lingering tight shots on the former Grandpa Munster saying that person looks familiar for some reason. But we like it when Stan Lee is like a mailman in the background.
I think that's great. I think that's great. And I do apologize if that's a spoiler. But on the other hand, it was the worst movie I've ever seen. So can you spoil a truly awful movie?
Oh, there's individual tastes, sir. Individual taste.
It is. I admit, and I have none because I also think The Mandalorian's kind of dopey. But did you enjoy Wonder Woman, Andy?
Haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay.
I do have plans. That's what I was going to see. That's why I had like such plans for that night because I had chips and salsa all ready for watching Wonder Woman on Christmas Day at the very very end of the day.
Well, you had plans.
Well, oh man, it was the first time since I was a kid that I woke up at 4:30 in the morning on Christmas Day and I was too excited to go back to sleep.
Oh my God.
And so unfortunately my plans were foiled because like at 8 p.m. like I turned on Santa Claus Conquers the Martians from Mr. 3000 and I fell asleep. I didn't wake up again until like 2 a.m. and it was like damn, I'm gonna have to see this.
Valerie Perrine is in that movie, and as you know, John Slanina is one of the last remaining hardcore Valerie Perrine fans. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about Apple stuff today. It's going to be kind of a light week because everybody went home for Apple. So I thought maybe we'd just run through some of the highlights of the year. We did a best of already, and the weirdest thing about the best ofs was seeing how kind of blissfully ignorant we were in the first couple of months of the year. It's like we
were
had
so naive.
We had no idea what was coming down the pike here.
Man. Can I since we don't have a lot of news, can I digress just for a second and just say to that point? So I'm doing like my favorite things of 2020, like YouTube live stream tonight, and so a lot of that is where did I buy things from? Oh, Amazon. So part of it was I'm going to go through like all the Amazon purchases, and of course they show you the most recent ones first, and then you get to like the first week in March, and suddenly I want gloves, I want alcohol, I want a thermometer, I want a blood oximeter, and then like a week before that, you know what? How about like a new camera case and a new pair of walking shoes? It was like, oh man, what are cultural archaeologists going to make of this?
The globe came down with an illness, whether we got it or not, and a lot of us did, and sadly a great many died. That's been a great tragedy in the year, and I never want to forget that. The problem is that number is so high that it's not even, we can't wrap our brains around.
It becomes a statistic, not a tragedy.
Yeah. One person's a tragedy, 300,000 is a statistic. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And Russia had their numbers yesterday. They were 3 times higher than everyone expected, and it still sounds like that was an underreporting.
Yeah. So
and China put a reporter in jail.
Horrible.
In jail for
horrible. Yeah.
Yeah. So
China's
for correcting the official reporting on.
There is an excellent New Yorker article, which if you've got a little free time in this last week of the year, it'd be worth reading. It's pretty much a book length. It's a 3.5-hour audio read. So that means it's basically a novella of the history of the coronavirus crisis. It's really interesting, although maybe it's too soon. I don't know. We're still in the midst of it, right? But we have to admit, 2021, we'll see what happens. Despite all that, in many ways, this was a banner year for Apple.
For big tech,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, big tech profits through the roof. And that's going to be, I think there'll be a reckoning because, people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk rapidly, ascending to the highest wealth of any in history, entirely on the back of a pandemic, is a tragedy in itself. But I think I don't mean Apple profit-wise. I mean Apple seemed to be firing on all cylinders. I mean, they ended the year with a release of new computers that just changed everything. And it's amazing they were able to develop those. Obviously, they've been in development for years, but they were able to get those out the door in the worst year in living memory. Is amazing.
Yeah, and the fact that they did it so successfully without any incident whatsoever. It was having I don't think anybody would have predicted that it was going to be a disaster, but I don't think anybody also would have predicted that this would have caused no more chaos. Releasing brand new Macs with a brand new type of CPU that not only has never run macOS publicly before, but has never existed before, and had this happen without any more hiccups than any conventional major annual release of macOS. That is such an achievement.
Do you think they gained because people were forced to work from home, that maybe the engineers were a little head down?
I think it's also because when you look at, because there was a lot of really good silicon this year, like NVIDIA put out Ampere, which is their next generation graphics card.
That's a good point.
AMD has Ryzen 3, and they have Big Navi, but they could not ship. They could not get cards out. The cards they did ship were quickly gobbled up by resellers. They had a disastrous release. I think it's all the more impressive that while, yes, some of the SKUs were limited quantities and have like a few months out on ordering, Apple shipped M1 where a lot of other big silicon companies couldn't ship almost anything.
Yeah, so not only did they design what will, I think, go down in history as the most important desktop chip evolution in a very long time. They managed to get it out the door in quantities that there was no. It wasn't like the PlayStation 5 where you would hope to have one by summer. If you wanted one, you can get one right now. There were a few weeks delays, but you got yours, Andy, eventually. John, you got yours. John's very happy.
I tried to find a 3090 card yesterday on Amazon, and all I could find it for was from a store called Sorry for Scalping, and it was like $3,800.
Well, at least they apologized.
But Amazon still let them sell it. I mean, like that's what we're doing.
Speaking of scalping, how much did Wonder Woman cost you?
30. Well, so what happened is, unlike Disney and Apple, Warner's didn't do an international release for HBO Max. It's a U.S. only service, and no other company. All the companies they've sold the rights to, like here it's Bell Media, Crave in Canada. None of them would pay to stream it because it's a ridiculous amount of money.
Right.
So we only got it on premium video on demand. So it was $30 for us, regardless of the service.
I'm so sorry, because that really adds insult to injury. Because then you have to pay $30, and it's still a terrible movie. It just seems. I'm sorry. I should not rag on this movie.
No, you're doing a lot of us a favor, because if we go into this pre-programmed with, I have no expectations, people that I know and respect have said it's a terrible movie, all it has to do is be good, and now you're like, oh my God, that was wonderful.
Yeah, it's a bit of an uphill climb, but okay. Actually, there, when Warner announced they were going to stream everything in 2021. There were a few wags who said, "Yeah, have you seen what the schedule? They're streaming it because they know they're not going to get box office anyway." And the first one was a blockbuster, WW84. I'm sure they'll make plenty of money on it.
Not to get too deeply into the weeds, but there have been, if you just watch the insider reports, it sounds like their studios are deeply dysfunctional. Like when you hear about what's been going on, whether you're a Zack Snyder or Joss Whedon person, it just sounds like everybody there is behaving abysmally. There are no parents running that studio at all, and so they didn't even tell anybody they were doing this. So like it's owned by AT&T now. It just sounds like this is the worst way to run a studio.
That's what I think happened.
As opposed to Disney and other places.
I think the Death Star doesn't know what they're doing. So we begin 2021 with Apple. Of course, Apple, because a lot of manufacturers in China, a lot of customers in China, Apple felt the pinch of COVID-19 early on. They closed offices and stores on February 1st in China. And immediately, Ming Chi Kuo said there will be issues with iPhone production, issues which did materialize by the end of the year. About a month's delay, roughly, in the release of the iPhone Pro, Max, and the iPhone Mini. Here's a lovely memo from Tim Cook that came out February 17th. The response, again, February 17th, folks. I've got to underline that. He's talking about how it's going to hit us. And manage Apple's global COVID-19 response with diligence and thoughtfulness. Our first priority now and always, the health and safety of our employees, supply chain partners, customers, and the communities in which we operate. Our profound gratitude with those on the front lines of confronting this public health emergency. I think they took it seriously, although there is this line outside of China. Customer demand across our product and service categories have been strong to date and in line with our expectations. Apple is fundamentally strong, and this disruption to our business is only temporary. I guess, a year is temporary, but no one knew how long it was going to be.
But also, all companies that operate at this scale, whether they're in technology, whether they're in investments, whether they're in finance, they actually have full-time departments that do nothing but run disaster simulations all along. So I mean, they will. If you remember the episode from Parks and Recreation, where the team gets under lockdown because they're doing a simulation of what happens if the bubonic plague or whatever hits, and everyone has a role that they have to play. I'm saying that's exactly what they do. It's like, what if there is like a limited nuclear war, and here's where it's happening, and we're going to game this out as though it's happening live today.
Do you think Apple's that big at this point that they're kind of operating at that global scale and planning?
Maybe not quite that scale, but the other thing that they had, it sounds bad to say, working in their favor, favor is that they've already gone through these problems with the bird flu in China a few years ago. Right. They've also had the problem of dealing with wildfires in their own backyard. So they were very, very much prepared for what if there is a disaster. We want to make sure that whenever there's a disaster of these two kinds that we've seen before, we know exactly what its response are going to be. Now, they can't plan everything, but they can make sure that, like a lot of the companies, the big question that a lot of people were having back in March is like, gee, how come Microsoft and Facebook have like millions of N95 masks to donate to relief workers? It's like, well, because again, they needed them. They were buying them up like when they were readily available a couple of years ago, because there were fires going on every single season because of global warming, and they need to pass them out to their employees. So that's the sort of stuff that they have to sort of think about when we have to coordinate hundreds of thousands of human beings all the way across the planet to have to be healthy and remain productive.
By March 13th, Apple realized WWDC wasn't going to happen in June. They said it kicks off with an all-online format.
Which only they and Microsoft did, because Google and Facebook canceled I/O and F8, respectively.
Yeah, again, when you look at how some of these other companies responded, you really have to be impressed by Apple's dogged determination to keep business as usual. Google basically just threw up their hands and said, yeah, 2020, and disappeared.
Yeah. And they're the biggest streaming company in the world.
I know.
Interesting.
I know. Meanwhile, Apple, said, but here's an opportunity. You guys are going to be at home, so design a new chip for us, would you?
If you could take a chip fab home with you, everybody. We've got 7, so we're going to have to share.
Make a few, and
they had the chips, but the thing that was interesting is that they did not have like the streaming. Like we all know, from multiple sources what Apple's streaming situation has been in the past, and it's been, they've had incidents in the past too, and they developed a way, like to quote John Gruber, to make an Apple TV show where almost every month there was a new episode, which was incredibly well shot, incredibly well delivered. And for WWDC, they also delivered all the sessions with all of the different engineers with their little tchotchkes on the desks, all the labs over, I can only imagine, WebEx.
Yeah.
It was logistically impressive for Apple, which is not that company.
So they had basically 3 months to put it together. And as soon as they said we're going to be online, they must have started shooting. But they also knew something we didn't know at the time, is how important this WWDC was going to be, because this was going to be the coming out party for the M1 for Apple Silicon. And we didn't know that at the time. But man, if you're talking to developers, you're going to have one shot, and you better make it a good shot. And I think we were so blown away for the first time going down in the lab, seeing Johnny Sarugi. I think that's where Johnny made his debut, right?
Yeah.
It was so impressive that actually I think it won people over in a way that a live WWDC keynote would not have.
Yeah, I agree. I think that
they had Cayenne badging in with like a fish tank.
Yeah.
It was whimsical.
Yeah. Andy?
Yeah. I think that this might have demonstrated to a lot of these big companies how limiting having a fully live focused, basically shutting down a good percentage of their campus and their staff for 4 whole days or 3 whole days, how limiting that could be when they could possibly create a much better experience for the developers and for the people who need this information by simply making sure that we're going to actually just script this out and shoot this and edit this and drop them at the appropriate times, that we don't actually need to have that energy of 3,000 people in a big hall cheering because someone's talking about how they're bravely going to continue to use the lightning cable on the iPhone. So I wonder if we're going to start to see this as it was a quaint thing we did. We're going to still do a couple of live events, but we don't really want to have to put up a party tent on our campus or off campus for 3 days a year, every single year, and host and make all those jackets and pins.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, is developers love the jackets and the pins, and it really is to woo developers. But ultimately, if the informational quality, the presentation is that much better, which it was, all of us at the time even said, why don't you do this way from now on? This is absolutely great. And here's the thing I do like. It's always been a very hard to get ticket, and a limited number of developers can get there. So as much as they like the pins and the jackets, the fact that anybody could go to WWDC, you pay for it. It ain't free. That anybody could see WWDC this year very democratic. I think again, of all the companies, Apple probably didn't make the most profit out of 2020, but they certainly showed the most creativity, ingenuity, and drive in making this a positive year for the company. And they really deserve a pat on the back. I can't think of another company that took these lemons that 2020 were handed us and made such a nice batch of lemonade. It was also in March that Apple released with Google news of an API that they would add to the iPhone. Google would add to all Android phones that would allow COVID-19 tracking. This was pretty controversial. It may still be controversial, although it is finding new life because, first of all, a couple of months ago, it got turned on automatically. It was never turned on automatically. It was always opt-in. But it got, without an app, in California, for instance, we can use it just by saying, yeah, turn it on. I have yet to get a COVID-19 alert, so I don't know how useful it is. But you might have seen, I know, Andy, you were talking before the show, that this county of Los Angeles has decided that they're going to use Apple and Apple's wallet to let vaccine recipients hold proof that they got the vaccine. And I think Apple has really found a good role in this without challenging privacy. You know, people trust Apple a little bit more on this. And so I think this is really, really good. The COVID tracker they announced in March, and now this ability to have it in your wallet. The validation that you've been vaccinated is fantastic. Yeah. Google will do it too, by the way.
Yeah. I think that the uptake of this sort of technology is going to go up next year if it means that, I'm sorry, but we're not going to let you check into a hotel unless you have proof of vaccination. We're not going to let you attend this live event unless you can present proof of vaccination. And obviously, the ability to just long press a switch on the side of your phone to bring up a wallet app and a QR code that could be scanned and say, "Yep, looks you had the vaccination. You've been clean for the past 3 or 4 months." Absolutely, by all means, enjoy your Foghat concert, citizen.
If only. There weren't a whole lot of hardware releases in the first half of the year. There was the new MacBook Air that came out in March, which I bought, which I'm now sorry that I bought. No, I'm not, but Lisa's using it. But I keep saying to her, "You want an M1? Trust me, you want an M1." They updated the iPad Pro in March to include LiDAR on the back and support the Magic Keyboard, which is nice. Give it the trackpad support. By April, they had the iPhone SE.
Oh, and the Magic Keyboard. We got. I think that was even bigger news than the iPad Pro.
Oh, yeah. But did the Magic Keyboard come out this year?
Yeah, it came out the same year as the new iPad, and it was backwards compatible with the previous iPad Pro, which was interesting. And it would turn out to be forwards compatible with the new iPad Air. But we didn't get a presentation. There was no, and the iPhone SE, the new iPhone SE, but there was no event. The March event was widely expected to be a replay of 2016 when we got the first SE and the 9.7-inch iPad Pro. But they ended up doing 2 separate news announcements, and they didn't have the video stuff lined up yet. So we got like this quaint. Apple didn't even air it. They gave some of us in the media this video, and I know Jason Snell posted it. I posted it. Craig Federighi showing off how to use the cursor, and a bunch of developers showing off their apps.
Yeah.
And it was just a really interesting, wild sort of an introduction.
Maybe that was one where Apple got caught with their pants down a little bit. Although the Craig Federighi video is quite impressive, and it made me think, wow, this might really work. Now, in hindsight, here we are 9 months later. Is the Magic Keyboard adding trackpad support and pointer support to the iPad? How big a deal is that, Renee?
It's a hugely expensive game changer. If you can afford that $300 plus
That's
keyboard,
the problem. It's the same
really
price as a
iPad,
laptop.
At least for me, an amazing. Yeah, it makes it an amazing. Well, some people have always wanted an iPad that was just worked more like a MacBook, and this gives them that. So, and there is a huge segment of Apple's customer base that is just not price sensitive when it comes to these things because it's got a Pro label on it, so that makes it quantifiably premium in some ways. And everyone I know who's got one, and me myself, just loves it because it's more of a dock. That's the thing, is they didn't make a keyboard, they made a dock. So it doesn't pretend to be a laptop. You stick your iPad on it, you type away as if it was a MacBook, and then you just get up, you pull your iPad off and you walk away, and it's a full-on tablet again. And that little shift, I think, in focus made it really useful for a lot of people. It
also, though, puts the iPad in direct competition with their MacBook Airs, because you're talking the same price point. It's basically, do you want touch or not, right? Is that the choice? I mean, actually, I shouldn't say that, because the operating systems are drastically different. And I guess
one is a truck with amenities, and one is a car with that now has a little bit of a towing capacity.
I'm a command line guy, and so I can never really feel fully comfortable with iOS, because I always feel a little bit like my hands are tied behind my back. So for me, it's no competition. But you're saying, do you young people like iOS? Is that what you're saying?
My Linux nerd friend, George's husband, who is a network administrator, IT type Linux, everything, builds his own gaming VR PCs. He does not like the MacBook at all. He uses an iPad Pro on the Magic Keyboard all the time. And he'll I don't know what it is anymore. What do the kids do now? They don't telnet anymore, do they? They VNC in, or they terminal in or something.
No one telnets anymore.
He'll do all that to his bigger machines.
SSH, baby. SSH.
SSH, that's it. Yeah, he'll SSH in and do all that, and that's...
I guess if you want a command line, you should get Linux, and otherwise you should have an iPad. What do you think, Andy? Did Apple create a competitor for itself at the same price point? Even very, very similar chips, just different operating systems.
I don't think that they're cannibalizing each other. I think that they're increasing the value proposition of what is, let's face it, a really expensive computer. It's $1,000 for the larger iPad Pro. That's
without the keyboard and without the pencil.
Then add $350 plus $100 if you want the keyboard and the pencil. And that's but even if you've just spent $1,000 on an iPad Pro, in a world in which $1,000 will buy you a very, very good Windows 10 tablet that next year or the year after or the year after that will run some really good ARM-based silicon, but not now. It's something when you consider that this is something that can run actual real desktop software for that kind of a budget on another platform. I think that it makes it more competitive. Like Renee said, there are a lot of people who have the kind of money where it's not as though $350 doesn't matter, but it's not a really, really heavy choice. It's something where they've got the dough. They like the way it looks. They like the way that this thing performs from a productivity standpoint when you have an integrated keyboard and a trackpad and this very, very smart sort of display, and they'll go for it. But the other part of it is that it really does it moves the needle a little bit on the Mac when you think of the iPad Pro, particularly the smaller one, as not as a tablet, but as a macOS sidecar target. As I can walk anywhere inside. I can carry this sleek Apple touchpad device with this nice little folding keyboard anywhere I go in the office building. And because I'm mirroring the display from my MacBook Pro in my office to it, in a very, very real sense, it is the super, super thin and light touchscreen based Mac that a lot of us have been begging for a long, long time. So, like I said, it comes down to value proposition
and preference. Obviously,
it's interesting too because that old Phil Schiller doctrine was always, they want to cannibalize themselves. They don't ever want to be in a situation where another company cannibalizes them. And if the Mac takes sales from the iPad has to fight back. And if the iPad takes sales from the Mac has to fight back. And this was a huge year for this because the Magic Keyboard really put pressure on the Mac. Like people were like, that's it. I'm using an iPad from now on. And then the M1 Max came out and they're like, look at this battery life, and you can run Final Cut Pro and you can run Xcode on it. And boy, did those Macs push back on the iPad Pro. And I saw people switching back and forth, both times this year.
To be fair, though, just to say quickly that if what you need is a laptop and you're trying to use an iPad instead, there's going to be some pain that is inevitable. This is Werner Herzog's view of the universe, that the universe will be indifferent to your suffering, and there will be suffering, and you can get around it, and it's certainly very, very useful. But there will be that time where, oh, that's great. No, I can definitely join your live stream. Oh, that's right. You're using a piece of software that kind of works on iOS, but doesn't do the things I needed to do on Mac. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'll bring my laptop
Unless you're
instead.
like Tichy or Snell, and then you're flying.
I also have to say, well, see, this is funny because I wanted to say, but then the M1 just makes me want to use the Mac, but it is really essentially the iPad chip. So I don't know what that
I think
means.
it's the other way around. I think Apple always built a Mac.
I think you're right.
Not to be facetious, but I think Apple was always building desktop chips, and they put them into these mobile devices.
Yes, because even last year, even when this iPad Pro came out in March, I remember thinking, this is why is it so overpowered? This is so much more than you need in this device. And I think I said it. I think if you look back, you could find me saying that. And my presumption was, well, we're going to see a lot more from the iPad at some point, or iOS at some point, that's going to need this horsepower. But I think you're right, Renee. That was the wrong take on it. The right take was exactly what you said. They had built a desktop chip, and since they had it lying around, they put it in the iPad. But they knew where they were going.
And because
with
they were
ultimately.
because they were used to these tiny, tiny thermal envelopes. Wow, was it efficient? And then it turned out when you put it back into an actual desktop machine, it was, with a big battery, it just flew.
The honeymoon has not ended for the M1 for me. Every day I use it. Every day I forget to plug it in, and it doesn't matter. I just think this is a sea change in desktop computing. It really is. So they had those were some new products. The SE. There was also they started making custom face shields, which was a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
We never heard much more about that. They killed the butterfly keyboard. Yes, in May of 2020, finally acknowledging that. When they launched the 13-inch MacBook Pro, that perhaps not everybody liked the butterflies. Will that ever come back? Is that gone for good?
Evil cannot be destroyed, it can only be dissipated.
I was fearful that we would get a 12-inch MacBook with that keyboard again, because Apple never said that it was dead. They just said that, we're still looking at it for other applications, and I was just the first one's going to be a 12-inch M1, and the world's going to break in half again, and I just can't take it in 2020 anymore.
Please. The keyboard on the new 13-inch MacBook Pro with M1 is very nice, very usable.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah.
Yep. Pleasantly surprised. It's as good, I think, as it's not my favorite mobile keyboard by any stretch, but it's a very, very good keyboard. It's as good probably as the 2015 MacBook Pro keyboard that it replaced, and that's kind of all I wanted.
That's saying a lot. That was the last good Mac keyboard.
I can use it. There's a key. There's actually more than half of a millimeter of key travel to it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Who knew that was a key to comfort?
As the chat room says, the butter has flied. Let's see. Oh, and this was the year, sad to say, that Tim Cook, along with Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and all the tech execs, were hauled to D.C. in July to testify, although some of what the Senate hearing was for Tim Cook was, as the Atlantic put it, a genius bar visit. Questions like, why the hell do I have to keep updating my apps on my iPhone all the time, and why don't you fix that? I'm sorry.
He dressed like Amy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, completely faded into his background. There was no contrast on his broadcast at all. It was because Mark was all up in their face, and Jeff kept saying he couldn't use the mute button and didn't know how Amazon worked, and that enraged them. And Tim just sat there, blended into the wall, and they forgot he was there for 45 minutes.
That was from the late John McCain. Carl Levin of Michigan said, I have an iPhone in my pocket. And then I have an iPad right here. My granddaughter even knows how to use it. All of it. Okay.
Let me tell you about my grandchildren.
People responsible for running government. It's bewildering to me.
It is our government.
Can't turn on an iPhone.
I don't know what it's like in your neck of the woods. Well, I think you have a fairly young prime minister. Everybody,
but we have a non-elected Senate.
Everybody in D.C. is now well over 70, some of them into their 80s and beyond. We're going to start having to have a Senate nap time. Anyway.
And you hear people say, like, the crackpot senator from blah, blah, who can't turn on his iPhone, but they vote for him every year. Years or whatever it is.
Well, he brings home the bacon.
He can't drive a car, but he can run the government.
He brings home the bacon. Senator Kelly Ayotte, Republican of New Hampshire, said to Tim Apple, so nice to meet you. I have an iPad. I guess Tim probably hears that all the time. Oh, Tim Cook from Apple, right? I have an iPhone. Like Tim doesn't think, yeah, so does everybody.
Autocorrect at least complain about autocorrect. Use your power for
Use your power for good.
Yeah. Now, if there were like a console like Xbox game for like Senate hearings, where you can put together like fantasy matchups, just like you say, what if Larry Bird played on a team with Shaq? It's like, I would love to play out the same game, only it's not Tim Cook, it's Steve Jobs. That's the person you're saying, hey, well, my granddaughter uses an iPad for this, and to have Steve reply with, I wish we could elevate the conversation a little bit.
Yeah. Actually, I have to apologize. I was reading an article from 2013, although it wasn't that much.
Yeah, that
wasn't that much different.
that was the one where the senator asked a big problem about something that's going on with the iPhone, and then didn't realize that it was Sundar Pichai on the stand.
Yes.
Saying, yeah, sir, we don't make the iPhone.
Yeah, no. Yes. That's the thing. It hasn't, in 7 years, it didn't get any better. The giveaway was when John McCain asked a question. I should have recognized the improbability of that.
His presence is still felt in the Senate to this very day. It's
still felt. You never forget the greats. Phil Schiller became an Apple Fellow, stepping down from his role, day-to-day role as Director of Marketing at Apple. That was in August. And actually a good replacement, Greg Joswiak, filling in. And really, having an engineer in that role, to me anyway, as a technology geek and as an enthusiast, I always want to see I don't like marketers because they say mealy-mouthed things, and engineers tend to, speak the truth. So I always like seeing engineers, if you can, in those roles. I'm sure they make terrible marketers, though.
His whole team is amazing. Like his whole team, like you talk to them and they can, because like a lot of companies, you'll talk to their marketing people and they're like used car salesmen. They'll tell you whatever you want to hear. They'll promise you they can do anything. They're basically salespeople. His team will dive deep into the entire camera system, the entire silicon stack, the radio stack, and they know all of it cold, because at Apple, the marketing job isn't just selling the device, it's building the device you want to sell. They have to do both halves of that. It's a very interesting marketing organization, but I think it makes them so much more effective and informed that way.
Actually, because you get those regular briefings from Apple, you probably saw or see the difference there.
Yeah. Well, also that historically, Phil Schiller wasn't just the marketing guy who was once every week gets a PowerPoint presentation to show here is what we're thinking about building over the next. He was on the leadership team, of course. Exactly. That position is someone who is in the room where it happens and has a voice. And no, I don't think that's a good idea, or I don't think that's going to be relevant in the next 2 or 3 years. So it's much more than putting on a good suit and going on Good Morning America to show somebody how wonderful this new battery is.
Yeah. But Jaws has
one of the
BS
people told Steve, no, we're making a small tablet, Steve. We don't care what you say, we're making a small tablet. And that's an interesting position to be in.
No kidding. The Apple versus Epic battle began in August. It will not end. In fact, there was a new shot across the bow from Epic Games, which got people a little hot under the collar. Kara Swisher was a little salty over receiving. Did you get your free Fortnite campaign box? Probably not. I don't think I'm on their Christmas list.
It's because that they know that my integrity is a fortress that their cheap, tawdry $180 jackets and $400 tablets cannot breach. I'll take half in cash though. So yeah, you get a satin jacket that says free Fortnite with an Apple colored logo, but it's actually a goat. It's a Fortnite goat. You also get and that's not so bad, although not great because those are expensive. But you also got a Galaxy Tab S7 running Fortnite.
Can we have a little conversation with Samsung marketing? I mean, like, it's okay when you make fun of Apple for getting rid of the power plug and then get rid of it yourself the next month. I mean, Xiaomi does that too. That's
Xiaomi
fine.
Just did
but
that,
could you at least have a little bit of brand integrity? Like you don't have to hit yourself to Fortnite. You're Samsung. You're one of the biggest companies in the world. Please act like it.
Kara Swisher tweeted, read the room, Epic Games and Samsung, sending a pricey logo winter jacket and expensive tablets and mimicking Apple's style to make a free Fortnite PR point about being an underdog. Feels yuck in the midst of widespread economic suffering. Sending it back, obviously, but not classy.
Their
There are plenty of
whole new normal
influencers,
thing, too,
however,
like-
who will be wearing that all over the place. Yeah.
They did
Not
this
only
whole
that, but-
new normal marketing thing too that I thought was really distasteful. Like, you don't get to define the new normal and tell me that I'm living in 2020 from now on. You get to be as empathetic and kind as possible this year, please.
Yeah.
And this is exactly the sort of thing that really, really seriously bums me out about the level of discourse and amongst tech commentators, that that there are so many YouTube channels that if they do any really good commentary and any good content, in addition to this other stuff, the fact that they also, hey, I just got this box from Fortnite. Let's do an unboxing.
Let's do an unboxing.
All right, well, and that's exactly what these boxes are designed to do. That, hey, we'll do if you got like people who will, you got a million viewers per video. They need content. They also need exclusivity, and they know that doesn't matter what the content is. Hey, and with the sub caption, "Don't I feel special?" They sent me this $180 aviator jacket plus this tablet, and maybe buried deep down a couple of weeks later, they will mention that, oh well, we actually played it on the Galaxy Tab, and it kind of stinks. I mean, again, this is why that line from Steve Jobs came so readily. That there are times where I just want to be silent for 10 seconds and then quietly say, what do you say we elevate the conversation somewhat?
Well, I also
don't
think
know how
it
you
hurts
feel about
Epic.
it, Andy, but there was this whole
Go ahead.
This whole thing, like over the last 2 years too, where like we're used to getting review like the product arrives, we know how long we get to keep it for, we have to send it back, but then this year there's increasingly #gift from, where a bunch of people who would ostensibly be reviewers are just getting given things, and I don't understand the relationship anymore as to what that is or what that means. It's very confusing.
I love iJustine, but I don't really understand the point of giving her an Xbox refrigerator.
Yeah, that's
well, it's her and Snoop Dogg.
I respect
Huge
her.
Love for her.
That's one of the exceptions where I wish that as soon as you get that phone call from PR saying, "Hey, we'd love to send you something, but we're going to have to freight it over," and that's okay. Stop. Tell me exactly what it is, and if it is not directly relevant to my area of coverage, again, thank you.
But you know, she's not going to do that because there is such a battle for views that she can't. I mean, that's her business, is getting views on YouTube. Yep. And how many views does that generate for you? Millions.
Well, I think it's also deeper than that this year, because there was an absolute dearth of sponsorships and advertising and everything, especially in the beginning of the year where nobody knew what was going to happen in 2020. And I think everybody inked whatever brand deals they could as fast as possible. And if you could sign Best Buy or Xbox or Google or whomever to sort of keep you afloat for 2020, I think that's why we saw so many videos from people who never saw them before that were completely sponsored videos or completely sponsored articles. Or like we see some major tech publications with sponsored tweets to sponsored articles this year. I think it was just like a huge flotation device.
Yeah, I just wish that there was more of a part. I have to acknowledge that I'm from a previous generation.
That's right.
Which doesn't mean that I have more integrity. It means that when I grew up, before I was writing about such stuff, there was such an iron firewall between any sort of marketing content that it was like being in the 1900s and considering like being seen on the arm of being a woman, being seen on the arm of someone who is not your father or your brother or your husband. Like, we would never do that. Oh my God, we would never, because there was definitely a connotation to, oh, so they decided to give you out of the blue a brand new Jaguar with like the Microsoft logo on the side of it, and you've been driving it for the past year, and that's not supposed to make me think that you're in the pocket of Microsoft. Whereas today, people who grew up with a different environment can understand that no, they were just doing it. They're doing this one video as a joke. It's a fun piece of content. They can have a lot of fun with it. They can do something that will amuse themselves and their audience. But the thing is, if the Xbox shoots purple flames as soon as you plug it in, they will report that, gosh, this thing is shooting purple flames, and I've lost my eyebrows, and I recommend you don't buy it. It's harder for people of my generation to keep, as the saying might go, tea and no tea in your hands at the same time and not have your mind blown by it.
Well, that's
they're individual people.
Yeah, and that's the good news. But I have to also say that I don't think this helps Epic, because it just makes them look a little scummy. This is so tone deaf. You know what helped solve the problem more than Epic's, and this battle is going to go on in court forever, is Microsoft's xCloud. Just saying, okay, fine, we'll put it on Safari on iOS, Stadia Safari too. On iOS. Oh, all better. If the good news is, and Apple's not going to close this loophole because this is keeping them out of the monopoly courts. And I don't mean the one with the guy with the monocle and the big mustache.
Uncle Penny. Uncle Pennywise, sorry.
But it's such a weird thing, Leo. Like when Epic first did this, I thought they were geniuses because, like, yes, they went through it. They did basically a Trojan horse. They went right after Apple and Google. And I thought, this is great. Like you're hitting them where they're weak. And then they sued Apple and Google. I'm like, but why? Google does sideloading. They're like, yeah, but it's not good enough. And like, hold on a minute. And then they go to court and the judge just annihilates them. And she gets the guy going, please don't make us talk again. And then she says, we'll just hold the money in escrow. Everyone can play the games. Everyone will be happy. We'll figure this all out. And then you'll get your money. And they still said no. And I'm like, okay, well, then this is not good faith. Like, no, you obviously don't have the best interests of your players.
They tipped their hand right.
I was on your side and I quickly changed sides.
Yeah. They showed, it was Tim Sweeney, and they showed, lack of faith from the very beginning. So fine.
And I'm still on Microsoft's side with xCloud. Like, this is not like an Apple thing. I was on Microsoft's side and Epic's side. I am now on Microsoft's side and not Epic's.
I guess the only thing, and Sweeney could come forward and say, okay, fine, but I got to point out that Safari hack does not give you the same results. I mean, that would be the only thing. But I have to say...
but he has the escrow thing. Like, they could literally just put the game back on and they'll get all the money if they win in court.
Well, he should have done that. But he might say... there is a loophole Microsoft and Google have opted for, but we don't feel that that's a good experience for our users. I have to say, in fact, it turned out the only way you could play Cyberpunk 2077 was playing it because it worked. If it crashed on Xbox One and it crashed on PlayStation 4, if you didn't have a state-of-the-art next generation console, and so few people do, that was a good way to do it. I played it on Stadia and it was fine. And it was even.
You got the PC version streamed, right?
Yeah. Well, it looked good on my M1 Mac laptop. And if you could say, well, Macs are not for gaming, except, whoa, wait a minute, thanks to xCloud and Stadia.
But they're wonderful client terminals.
Yeah, they're good terminals.
They're the VT100 of the, dare I say, the VT102 of the 21st century.
It is just, maybe you guys.
Remarkably.
Go ahead, Renee.
I was going to say, I think this is still like remarkably myopic on Apple's point. It just shows that they're not looking at the App Store as something that has evolved over 10 years.
Well, they're going to have to. They're going to have to.
Yeah, this is like Netflix. It's like saying we don't want Netflix because they're not putting all the Netflix titles in iTunes.
Right. That is one thing, though, that Apple did this year that was an acknowledgement that we have to change, which was they cut the commission for companies making less than $1 million in the App Store down to 15%. They cut it in half. And that was, I think that was a very good move. They should be patted on the back. That goes a long way towards solving the monopoly issues. Do you agree, Renee?
It has a couple problems that they need to solve. One is how you get it versus how you lose it, like just based on the calendar. And they enacted some policies to prevent people from selling off apps to have like 4 apps under the $1 million thing instead of, one, like a company with over 4 million because they have 4 apps. So there's a few rough spots, but I saw a lot of developers, friends of ours, get their application approvals, and they were ecstatic. Like, I can hire an extra person.
That doubles
I can upgrade this. I can. Yeah.
No, that's huge.
It meant a lot to them.
And I think that certainly makes developers feel a little better. It shows that Apple is at least paying attention, that they're not completely, talk to the hand. And yes, it was, I think, maybe even rushed out in response to all this, but at least it was something, and it's a first step, not a last step. Andy?
That's a good point, and that's exactly why. Even though I don't think that Fortnite was a biblical issue that needed to be discussed. However, the larger issue of, is Apple running the App Store in a way that is fair to that is optimal for all parties in the 21st century? I'm sorry, I don't know, it's not 21st century. It is. They started it in the 21st century. I'm thinking of 2020, but it's now 2020. The App Store was started over a decade ago, if we can believe that. Now, but are there policies that were from a decade ago that are still important and still relevant today, or should we sort of insist that Apple start to revisit some of those and make new decisions? They certainly, we didn't catch them say, oh gosh, well we were going to be announcing these changes in September anyway. I guess we're going to have to move those up like about a month and a half. We may as well. We'll just change some of the dates in the press releases. No, they probably weren't even. They'd probably done the math on that at some point in the just as a way of knowledge, but they would not have done that if their feet had not been held to the fire by new lawsuits saying, well, guess what? This is a vulnerability. This is something that you should at least come up with a really good explanation of why you think that 30% take for all comers, not just the big earners, even the small people. Why that is still relevant? Why that is still a good number? Or is it time to start making it easier for small developers who are not doing not trying to steal millions of dollars from kids' parents with in-app purchases? They're just trying to get people to pay $2.99 for a really nice little text editor. Is it time to revisit all of that? And that's what happened as a result of that. So that's why you might not necessarily think that when someone brings a case like this that they have a really great case, but that doesn't mean that Apple or another company like that or a plaintiff like that, defendant like that, shouldn't be prepared to make their argument, go in front of a judge and say, we're going to explain ourselves, and we're not explaining ourselves through PR and marketing at this point. We are doing it through lawyers because we know that there are repercussions this time.
Well, it also doesn't hurt that Washington, D.C. was taking a little evil eye look at all of this. And,
also a plus.
And the EU. And I have to say, there are a lot of people who say, oh, the government shouldn't get involved. But at the very least, the threat of governmental interference and action is enough in many cases for these companies to go, okay, well, wait a minute, hold on, we'll figure this out. So that's a good thing. And you know what? The threat has to be backed up by a potential for action. Certainly in the EU, there are huge fines. So I think this is a good thing. I think the companies aren't going to automatically do something that's not maybe in their best financial interest, but with a little bit of, coercing, cajoling, and cracking of the whip, maybe they'll do the right thing ultimately.
It's almost like having a balance is a good thing, like having a balance of government regulation and free enterprise. Like if any one of those is too much in excess, things break down. But we should strive for more balance in our culture and not so much, one way or the other.
I agree.
Binary.
So that takes us to September. Remember September?
Apple Watch and an iPad.
Apple Watch SE, and then iPad Air. Plus, they announced the Apple One subscription service. They did at the time announce an Apple appeals process for the App Store, which was good.
Yeah, another important thing.
Yeah. So September. First of what turned out, we didn't know at the time, was going to be three, count them three. A trilogy of product reveals. It's like The Hobbit. You could have done it in one, but okay.
People were so angry because they were sure there's no way Apple's not going to announce an iPhone in September. There is no way. And then Tim Cook right at the beginning goes, Apple Watch and iPad. And you just heard the room go,
But again, going back to March and April, and everybody said, look, supply chain's disrupted.
Yep.
This is going to happen. There's going to be a few weeks delay, and that's exactly what happened. It was 1 month later in October. They announced the iPhone 12 Mini, the iPhone 12, the iPhone 12 Pro, the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Is that the most iPhones they've ever announced in one fell swoop?
When you count the SE, it's 4 is the most they've ever announced at once. They've announced 3 at a time for the last 2 years. So they announced 4 this time, plus the SE earlier in the year for like
five
a
phones.
pentad of iPhones.
A pentad.
Yeah.
But this is what they did. I remember when the iPod was at the peak of its success, the way they found growth was by slicing it up into different categories and prices and sizes.
Every industry that's mature, you start to segment
it. And of course, as Steve Jobs pointed out when he came back to Apple in the 90s, this is risky. You don't want your product line to become too crazy and diverse. But this is it's balance again, Renee. It's balance. This is what you need to do. They also unveiled. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's also the effects of being in a really, really competitive new market, where for most of the iPhone's life, you really could get away with having just one $800 model. But at this point, you need to have the luxury model. You need to have the baseline model. And God help us all, if we work for Apple, you have to figure out a way to make a budget-oriented phone so that people who don't necessarily have $1,000 to spend on a phone, people who are in the phone store at Verizon and AT&T who are seeing, wow, this phone that costs $300 that runs, I don't know what it is. I don't need to know what it is. Look, it has a bigger screen than this iPhone that I was going to be buying. It has more games on it than this other thing. Also, I like the fact that they've got a banana case for it. I want the banana case for the phone, and they walk out with a $350 phone instead of the $800 phone. So this is market pressure at its best.
They announced also
and the interesting thing, though, is they didn't like back in 2016, they made an iPhone SE that was smaller and less expensive, and it combined those two markets, and it did pretty well. Not explosively, but it did pretty well. This year, they had an iPhone SE, which was less expensive, and an iPhone 12 mini, which was smaller. They split those two things apart, and I'm sure they want to test everything at this point, and they're big enough to test everything. But I'm not sure either of those markets by itself is going to end up being as big, even as a sort of middling market that the original SE was for them.
Is the 12 nothing the best seller of the bunch? That's the one I see advertised a lot. I think phone stores.
It's hard to tell because the Pros sell early. The Pros have spike, and then the regular ones sell consistently throughout the year because nerds got to have their phones first, Leo.
Yeah, we all got iPhone 12 Pros, of course. But I think that, at least in the U.S., and I don't know how it is in the rest of the world, but in the U.S., most phone sales are driven from phone stores, company phone stores. Yes. And almost all the ads I see are for the 12. Yeah. Because that's where that's the best price point.
The Mini is apparently doing the worst right
Is
now,
it
or
really?
The least. The least.
You think it's battery life? Or I don't think necessarily it's size. You think it's battery life?
I think people on Twitter assume that they're the majority of the market when almost all the time we are a very small niche. And if you talk to every designer I know bought it and loves it, and a bunch of tech Twitter bought it and love it, but that's really not a mass market. They're always like, oh, I really want it, and I know everybody would buy it because I think I'm going to buy it. That's not how that works.
Yep.
Yeah. How big does a screen have to be to contain one social media post with media without having to scroll? And that's your answer.
Well, again, despite COVID-19 and what could have been a Pixel 5 year, Apple showed some really nice new hardware, and they also solved, at least to some degree, a problem that the iPhone is going to face from now on and has faced for years, which is it's hard to come up with something new. LiDAR was impressive. The photography was impressive. Dolby Vision HDR was impressive. They were able to put enough new features.
Pro RAW is really cool.
Pro RAW, amazing. So photographers are happy. I think the new chip is incredibly fast. Apple's really going to see the benefit in both directions from its silicon development at this point. Well,
they also shipped spatial audio for the AirPods Pro and then brought it to the AirPods Max. And it's just, I don't think I'm used to my headphones getting that sort of feature improvement year over year. Regardless of what you think about it, we just didn't normally get new features for our headphones.
Yeah.
They're headphones. They got a firmware update every once in a while to fix a problem, but that's a major headline feature that they just added to it at WWDC.
You're listening to our end of the year edition of Mac Break Weekly. Renee Ritchie, Andy Ihnatko. I'm so glad you guys could be here. It's kind of a little bittersweet that Lori can't, to sum up the year. She was here right to the bitter end. But
I'm sure she's watching.
We love you. We miss you, Lori. But I'm glad I've got you guys sitting around the fire.
The spaceship came and take her away, as it's taken away so many of my friends in journalism.
If they could just take a couple of pounds of flesh of mine with them, I'd be very, very happy. All right, let's move on. We've done now the first two product announcements. I left out the HomePod Mini. I was going to talk about that too.
Yeah.
Before we move on to product announcement number 3. That was a big one, I think, the Mini. People, I suspect that's going to sell one. A small one. Though it was pretty clear that the HomePod. Look at him and his scented candle.
It's like a little softball or a grapefruit.
Oh, so cute.
It's like you're vacationing. You're on a cruise ship, and that's like the plastic coconut that you got to keep after you had your Mai Tai.
I think it's interesting.
Not as tasty, but true.
Google did the same thing where they had a very high-end $300 or $400 Google Home Max, which had very good sound. I think competed well with the HomePod's sound. But they discontinued that this year. All three companies, Amazon, Google, and Apple, came out with $100 kind of softball-sized speakers. They've seemed to have converged on the market. Is that because they're looking at each other and saying, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Or is the market really saying, no, we don't want to spend more than $100? Well, you have it, Renee. Is it adequate?
It's a mix of two things. No, it's like this. It's a mix of two things. Apple really did go into the HomePod without any idea of what Amazon was going to do with like it didn't exist. It was a 5-year-long project. They were trying to do computational audio. They were trying to do for speakers what they did for the iPhone camera, except instead of portrait mode and the other depth effects, they were going to do computational audio and spatial audio and adaptive EQ. And I think Google and Apple both realized that putting that many speakers and microphones and all the other sensors in there was expensive. And Google sort of hedged with both products early on. And Apple's like, we're going to pay down this technology now and make a $300 speaker. Because that's often how Apple does things. I think Amazon never had any interest in speaker quality. They were just getting Alexa into as many rooms as possible, and they've driven the price. I think you can get them basically for free if you're willing to make it look like a tiger and put it in your kids' room for them. So it's a vastly different strategy. Apple is still going for a speaker, and they're leveraging the technology now in the AirPods too. It's the same stuff, just like stuck in your ears or stuck over your ears. It's really it's early days. It's really impressive what they can do with like really bad MP3 files and streaming video, like what sound they can pull out of it. But I think it's a vastly different market than what Amazon has. It's not a commodity market at all for Apple. I just don't know if enough people are willing to pay what it costs for all that technology to get what's still limited sound quality.
Yeah, see that's the difficulty. That's if there's a consistent problem that Apple has or a weakness that Apple has, it's that they don't understand the economics of good enough. That there are a lot of products that on a speaker like that, they misjudge the idea of how good a speaker of that design has to be. And yes, you're winning certain contests, but they're contests where the referees are people who are looking at spectrograms and giving you charts and graphs, as opposed to people who just plop this thing in their living room or in their bedroom and then say, does that sound as good as anything I've ever heard? Yes. Okay, that's good enough. So why am I spending $400 for this instead of $150 for even a Bluetooth speaker? And then you add, that's just speaker compared to speaker. When you also get into a personal assistant, both Google and Amazon early on realized that the speaker was kind of incidental to the voice assistant feature. That's the magic, the ability to even just something as simple as an egg timer, even before things got really, really sophisticated. That's kind of magical. That's why people are buying this device. That's why people are buying the world's largest store and the world's largest advertising company, paying them to put a high-quality omnidirectional speaker inside their house, because that's a really, really great feature and a really, really impressive application of technology. Meanwhile, Apple is trying to Shlomo gets way too much stick from way too many people. The fact that it's not as good to me as the others doesn't mean that it's bad, but nonetheless, when it can't do the sort of magical, when it was late to the game of doing continual conversation, when the voice model was about it felt like 8 years behind the voice models that Google was using, when they're not making the integration with home automation work quite so well. That's what lost in the game. So meanwhile they'll put all those big sound demos, those big listening studios, to say, oh, look how wonderful this sound is on our $400 speaker, when in reality most people are saying, well, for your $400 speaker, I could buy two really nice smart speakers from Google plus 3 or 4 of their tiny $30 little smart speakers to put here and there so that I can still get alerts and still listen to music while I'm shaving and stuff like that. They really missed the boat, missed the idea of here's what people are willing to pay and why they're willing to pay that money for a smart speaker. So they're turning around. I'm glad that they realized that perhaps a tangerine that costs $100 is much better than a cantaloupe that costs $400.
It's really interesting how I never understood how starlings and fish can school so well, but I feel like the tech industry is like that too. They swim in schools with products. For a while, it was this glut of Bluetooth speakers. Like, you couldn't turn around without hitting a Bluetooth speaker. And I think they've somewhat been replaced now. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think they've somewhat been replaced by these. And if you think about it, $100, even though you have to keep it plugged in. So yeah, when you go on your big beach trip in your VW van with all your buddies, you're going to have to bring a Bluetooth speaker. But for the rest of the time, having this little scented candle size speaker that gives not awesome audio, but decent audio, and has a voice assistant and all these other capabilities, I could see why people would choose that. That seems like a reasonable category. The other reason the price is important is because you end up wanting to have it in every room in your house, right? This is Apple looking at Amazon and saying, oh, yeah, you were smart to have all those cheap Echoes because people just put them everywhere. How many, Renee, do you have one in every room? How many would you have if you...
I have 2 HomePod Biggies, one on each side of the television, that because now with the latest version of watchOS, you can dedicate them to the television. I have those instead of a sound bar, and I still use them for all the Siri stuff. Not the Siri stuff, all the HomePod stuff. And then I have 2 HomePod Minis, one in my room and one ostensibly in my kitchen, but it's been sitting next to my recording stuff for the last month, just so I can test different things.
My problem is...
It's great, though. I mean, like, it really solves... people have had this problem with the AirPods Pro Max as well, like trying to understand what they are. And they really are computational audio. It just, they take the junkiest stuff that you get streaming off the internet, like MP3, AAC, and Bluetooth, and decompose it down to its bits, just like the Pixel camera does with images, and then rebuilds them better than the atoms have any right to be. And it's admirable technology that I hope destroys like any complaints we have about Bluetooth in the future as it becomes, mainstreamed.
I just don't want to be a fish following the school. Now I have to get rid of all my Amazon Echoes and Google Hubs and replace them with Apples. And then next year, what's it going to be? But it does feel like there is something to be said for having a HomePod Mini in every room of the house and having it follow you around and giving you, home music. I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think the price is low enough. A few $100, most people could do that.
What's frustrating is that Amazon and Google are clearly ahead in assistance, and Apple and Google are clearly ahead in computational everything. Like Google has got better algorithms. Apple usually combines pretty good algorithms with pretty good hardware. Everybody else has pretty good hardware and lousy algorithms. So if you're willing to, if you think Google's deal is fair, you can get really good quality stuff both from the assistant and the speaker. But if you have, and I'm glad we have this alternative, if you do have issues with Google or God forbid a Facebook portal or something, at least Apple is giving you an alternative, which I think is valuable.
All right, let's move into the future, because the third announcement was not unexpected, but I think in the long run, people are going to look back and say this was the year everything changed. Apple's announcement of M1-based Macintoshes. What do you think? People happy? It seems like all the reviews are extremely positive.
I was very, very surprised. We all knew it was coming, but if I had to put money on it, I would have put money on them putting out one model that is mostly for early adopters, and that there would be a lot of use cases in which this early model would be appropriate. But for the most part, we'd be advising people wait until 2021 when they put the real products into the product line. I don't think that any of us expected that we would be saying, nope, if you need a MacBook Air or if you need a MacBook Pro that has MacBook Air tendencies, by all means jump in right now. You won't regret it, because it'll be much faster than whatever you would have bought via Intel this year. And there really does seem to be practically no trade-offs to doing it. So yeah, I will say that it was a surprise to me that they pulled it off so well. And again, I put my money where my mouth is. I'm very, very happy with the purchase.
Me too. Me three, me four. And the more I see the reviews and so forth, the more I think they're really on to something. In fact, really, it's not so much what today's M1 based Macs mean, it's what that means for the future of Macintosh next year, the year after. I can't wait.
Well, yeah, if these are the ultra low power version, I don't think any of us can wait to see what they do with the middling and high power version.
And there was, I think when they announced it in June, there was a question mark. Can Apple pull this off? I was very confident that they could, having done so 3 times before, but I feel like there was a reasonable concern. Is Rosetta 2 going to cover enough use cases that people don't feel like, oh my God, what happened? And I think Apple, in every respect, showed that they could do it. There was also this issue, which was really a spurious issue of, you don't want to buy the first M1s but they weren't the first M1s. They've been doing these since 2007. These were just a successor in a chip family that is actually very robust. It's been around for some time and gets better every single year. And I think everything that we were perhaps worried about fortunately has not happened. I mentioned when I got mine, the only issue I have found is these edge case developer tools and stuff, and I am very happy to report it, even in the intervening few weeks, the weird languages I use, the weird editors I use, things like that, all have been updated. And I think we're well on our way towards full compatibility in over the next year, let's say. I just saw an article that said even Adobe Premiere runs better on the M1 Mac.
Anything on Metal runs better than it did on Intel, even if it was compiled for Intel, which just the pipeline is so good. Now they also announced
these new AirPod Max. Jury's still out on those. It's hard to imagine that these will sell well at that price. Maybe Apple didn't really care. Anybody?
They sold their capacity out through March, so I mean, like they sold as many as they could afford, they could make.
Right.
Yeah. It's an audio item, but it's also a style item, and I think that kind of is what's driving the popularity. It's a very, very desirable thing to have.
I guess I have no desire.
I made a quick list. So like if you're all in on Apple, I mean, like you have an iPhone and an iPad and an Apple Watch and likely a Mac. And you want wireless headphones, and you want them to be over the ear, and you want them to be noise canceling, and $550 is just not an amount of money that you care about. These are probably the perfect headphones for you, because what they do computationally is really impressive. Like they will take, I know garbage in, garbage out is never the best solution, but you can feed them almost literal garbage and they'll make it sound better than it has any right to do. Like Bluetooth just shouldn't sound this way. But you have to be all in on Apple, or they're going to be incredibly limited to very little value for you.
I think that's
if you tick those boxes.
Is that your positioning, or is that something Apple positioned it as? Is this computational? That's mine.
I think.
Yeah, I think it's a good take on it.
Apple's thing was like, these are like HomePods. We designed them for people who want the best pod. Like the whole thing with the HomePod is we designed it for people who have no audio. They don't want to get into audio. They don't know audio. They don't want to wire anything. They just want to drop a box in the room and have the best possible audio no matter where they're in the room. And their thing for the AirPods Max was like, these are for people who just want really good over-the-ear headphones, and they don't want to have to worry about where their music is coming from, what format it's in, what wireless protocol they're using, what codec they're using. They just want to be able to put on a pair of headphones and get really good sounding audio. And obviously, they're in the Apple ecosystem.
And if they are still not as expensive as you'd like them to be, Caviar has announced a Max Gold version for a mere $108,000. It'll be out sometime in 2021. They're not really doing much to it.
Had them for 2 weeks and is going to tell us what he thinks of them.
They're plating it in gold, and honestly, that's way too much for a gold-plated pair of headphones.
It must be heavy.
Well, wait till you see like the first set of like iced out headphones from like footballers. That's when you're going to see that.
Yeah. Yep.
No, my thing really with these is like if you take a photo with an iPhone or a Pixel phone, the sensor is embarrassing. Like compared to a Canon or Sony or like any real camera, it is a tiny, tiny, pathetic sensor, and we get images out of that we don't deserve to get. Well, not that we don't, but that's beyond the ability of the atoms because they bracket and they stack and they do all these computational tricks. And these are the same. You can get much cheaper wired headphones that sound better. You can get Bluetooth headphones that are much cheaper that don't sound better, noise canceling ones at least. But these take audio signals that are legitimately terrible and give you really good audio from them.
Yeah, but I do think that your first statement was a very, very important one, or the one that I really, really identified with. Like maybe I'm making this analogy because I was binge watching Ink Master while I was cleaning the house this morning. but
as one does, yeah.
It's actually I like that show. It's kind of a nice show.
Is it about tattoos, Andy? Is that what it's about?
It is about inkers who are masters of the craft. I don't know. It is about tattooing.
Andy, you don't have any tattoos you could show us, do you?
Not on me, not right now. But maybe for my pick of the week, I can go into the other
I think
room.
it's funny that somebody who is not inked is a fan of Ink Master.
I will. Well, again, we don't have any news, so I will short diversion. I'm fascinated. A, it's a wonderful art form. B, it's an incredibly tricky art form where, no, you put down a line, you don't get to erase it. You have to deal with the line that you just put down there. But also in terms of like having a competition show in which there are the tattoo artists.
It's a competition?
No, it's a competition show. But this is what I'm getting at. There are people who are fans of the show who will simply come in, like sign up to say, by the way, they don't know what tattoo they're going to be getting. Today there's it's an old school it's an old school challenge, and you have to do like an old school tattoo on old school style. The person who's coming in just knows that they're going to get a free 6-hour long tattoo, which would probably cost like $1,000-$1,500. They get to discuss maybe a little bit what they're going to be, but essentially they get what they got, and that's about it. And I'm fascinated by this idea of this decision of, instead of choosing and spending months and months and months researching an artist and thinking very, very hard about what I want to add to my collection, it's like, life. I'm going to show up. I'm going to show up here. There in the finale. Okay, I will wind this up. I'm kind of spinning up.
No, I asked you.
There's in the finale comes down to, of course, two people. This is one where they get to go back to their own home shops, and they get 24 hours cumulative to work on like their final presentation tattoo. But this is still a situation where someone is coming in and being. I think that like maybe they know they're getting like a head tattoo, a skull tattoo, but it's they're getting a tattoo on their skull. But it's like, okay, this is my tribute to like Maori tattooing techniques. So the left side of your head is going to be a Maori woman. The right side of your head is going to be a Maori man. There's going to be but when you walked in, when you answered that little ad on Craigslist, did you think you're going to be having two strangers' faces on the sides of your head and you went through with it. It was gorgeous work, but I'm like,
you got to be all in, you got to be all in.
Yes. But I'm sorry. What I was getting at is that there are fans. There are fans of Apple, but then there are fans of Apple. There are fans of Apple who got an Apple tattoo, and then there are the fans of Apple who, when Apple went from the 6-color to the solid logo, got that rainbow tattoo inked over in black. And the AirPods Max are for this third group of people.
Yes.
And the third group of people are not silly. I'm not making fun of them. I'm saying they're people that are so committed on Apple that this is part of what pleases them about the Apple style, the way that it works so well with Apple products. It doesn't bother them that, well, what if I want to use it with my with a different streaming box and listen to TV? So that's the sort of people that's for. And there are enough people out there that obviously when you can't, no product can be deemed a failure when they're unobtainable until March. That's
you're right.
A pretty indication that they found their market for this.
Yep. Incidentally, this was the year Apple turned privacy up on iOS 14. This was also the year Facebook took out full-page ads in some of the major newspapers in the United States saying, Apple, it's bad for small businesses. What are you doing?
Oh, the cojones on these people. I mean, the text is like, don't worry, small businesses. We've heard your cries and we're here to fight your battle for us. We won't let you, Apple, mean old Apple, burn you into the ground by its mean policies of informing users that tracking technology is going to be functioning in your app from app to app to app. Like, oh, man.
And Apple's response was great. He said, go ahead. We're not saying you can't do it. You just have to ask people. You just have to tell them. What's wrong with that? Because everybody knows. Everybody will say, well, no, I don't want you to do that.
Yeah.
No, that's not a good idea. What? So good for you, Apple. Good for you. Banner year. Great success all around. Have I left any big stories from 2020 out? I just have to say Apple deserves.
The Apple Car got pushed, Leo. It's fine. The Apple Car got pushed till later.
Oh my God, that's good. Okay, so the next segment we'll do some of the stories that have happened since we've met last. That's one of them. The Apple Car. It'll be out in 2022, 2023. It'll be out in 2024, 2020. The last one I saw is 2028. It's like
sold it.
It's like what kind of rumor mill are you guys running around here? Pick a year and stay with it. Nobody's gonna. Anyway, I was paying attention till it got to about 2025, and I thought, well, I don't.
Yeah, 2028. I was just zoned out.
Isn't that hysterical? I was just watching that number go up and up and up and up. We're just kind of covering the year. It's an end of the year get together with two of my favorite people, Andy and Natko. WGBH in Boston. Are you taking a little break on GBH for a while, or when are you going to be back on?
This week is off because of the holiday, but back on next Thursday at 1 p.m.
All right. Natko.com, IHNATKO. Rene Ritchie is a YouTube star in his own right at youtube.com/Rene Ritchie. Guilty as charged. RR at Rene Ritchie. How you doing all alone in freezing cold Montreal? Is everything, you doing all right? Did you get together with family over the holidays? I didn't ask you what you get to do.
No, because my family is scattered a little bit, and none of us were going to travel, so we did the Zoom thing. Different groups and different Zooms.
Did you at least have a good bagel?
I did not have a good bagel, but I did. I put together not on a Natko quality level, but I put together an Natko style feast where I cooked up something and then had it as my holiday meal for the next 3 days. It was fun.
I had all these plans, and then I got food poisoning on day one of the vacation. I didn't emerge from bed for like 7 days. In fact, really, this is the first time I got out of the house pretty much. And so I got nothing done. I didn't really, I think Christmas happened. I don't remember it. Didn't get to cook. I had all these delicious meals I was going to make and all that stuff. So, don't know. Sorry. But it sounds like all three of us had kind of Christmas interruptus.
Well, it was still a good Christmas. I watched a lot of TV. I still had families.
Yeah.
and sometimes that's what defines a really good Christmas.
Yeah, that's really all you need.
Like, I'm just saying that the salmon that I made for like dinner at 1 p.m. was fantastic.
Yeah,
I had a pork roast and a pumpkin tortellini like ready to go for dinner. But at 4 o'clock, I decided that I don't want a pork roast and pumpkin tortellini in the next 2 hours. So I canceled the pumpkin to the tortellini and the pork roast. No one wigged out. No. It was perfectly fine. Sometimes
that's one of the beauties of that.
Like that.
Yeah, that's one of the beauties of that. People aren't coming. They're not going to knock at your door at 3 p.m. saying, "Where's our turkey?" No, it's fine. And I still have the tortellini in the fridge.
But this could be Grandma's last Christmas, and you're gonna have her last Christmas without the watermelon fondue that she brought from the old country.
Oh God! Hey, what you do celebrate the Eastern European Christmas still, right?
Yes, I do. Russian Christmas, I don't have to look up what the date is, but it's usually like 10 days after the regular Christmas, or excuse me, the regular.
So you get a second one.
Christmas.
It's nice.
Yeah, actually,
it's like Canadian Thanksgiving, but it's later.
Right.
It's lower key. It's usually ham and pierogies, but it also means that like.
It's January 7th this year.
Yep.
So it's a long ways off.
Yeah, so that's why like I can keep I can. It's okay if I put the tree up like on the 23rd or the 24th because I was lazy, didn't get around to it. Because no, it's I'm honoring both of my grandparents' sets of heritage by putting it up before the Catholic Christmas, but then taking it down after the Orthodox Christmas, I guess. No, it's not because I'm a grown adult who doesn't get his stuff together, but
well, at least you have something to look forward to. The rest of us it's a long, grim, freezing cold winter with no redeeming features.
You can do virtual CES, Leo.
Did you guys sign up for CES?
No. I'm taking this year off.
Yeah. Well, my pick of the week this week actually has to do with CES, last year's CES. All right, let's continue on because we now have a few stories, not many, but a few stories that happened since our last get-together. Number one was the Apple Car. By the way, the latest update on that is Goldman Sachs says, no, they're not making a car. Why is this, Renee, why is this the story that just will never die?
Because when you look at the sources of this information, they are either industry rags that all they want to do is position components for sale, like they're basically open bidding. You see this a lot in Korean and Chinese papers. And then you have people like Ming-Chi Kuo and people like Barclays and Goldman Sachs, which are investor-oriented. They're financial analysts, and they want to make sure that the market moves in ways that benefit their clients.
Now, this story was broken by Reuters, right? I think this is a Reuters
so the China
story.
Daily had it first, and they said it was coming this year, like in 2021.
Oh, crap.
And then Reuters said, no, it's like 2024. And then Guo Mingqi said, no, 2027. And all they're doing is like everyone wants to know what's next from Apple. As soon as the iPad came out, all we did was talk about the Apple Watch. And then when the Apple Watch came out, where's the smart speaker? It's a lot of money to be made selling and buying Apple shares based on the rumors of what's going to be next.
So there's no reason for me, for instance, to put off my order, my Mach-E Ford Mustang, and wait for the Apple Car. Is what you're saying?
No, not until later this decade.
The only reason I could think of is all of the viral YouTube videos of Mustangs spinning out after coming out of Cars and Coffee. That's it. You might get a little bit of razzing for that, but that's about
other than that. So that was just a hysterical story that I was almost glad that we didn't have any Mac Break Weeklies because it was just every time I saw a link, there was a new date. So I thought, well, we'll just wait till this settles down a little bit, and it settled down to nothing.
There's nothing wrong in admitting, or excuse me, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but I admit that I don't know why Apple would ever want to do a car. I don't know if they're even planning to really do a car. It's cost me nothing to admit that. I will be pleased to look at it if they were to actually put one on a stage for during an event. But until then, I'm not going to believe anything that I read anywhere about any Apple car.
Yeah. Really, the only reason it's a big, I know why it's a big story, but the reason it's a story for us and for me is it would show an interest by Apple in something that is so far afield that, there's something that's kind of interesting. Factoid, I guess.
Well, Jeff Williams said it's the ultimate mobile device, and then I think Apple PR almost chalk-blocked him off the stage. So,
No, it's not. While we were gone, both Firefox and Google announced versions of their browsers that are native to the Apple Silicon CPUs. That's really good news. You can use your preferred browser. I think Safari still has the edge in terms of JavaScript performance and so forth, and battery life for sure. But at least Chrome and Firefox are now native, so that's good news.
And there's some sites that just won't work. Like you'll go there in Safari or anything using WebKit, and it'll say not compatible, and then you'll say, of course it's compatible. You're just being a jerk, and you'll have to launch Brave or something to get into it.
Just keep it around just in case. The story that has been bubbling along for the last 6 months, and it continues to bubble along, the issue of forced labor in the use of iPhone suppliers' parts. Now, the most recent one is Lens Technology, an iPhone glass supplier. According to the Washington Post, they've been accused of using forced Muslim labor in the factories, the Uyghurs, according to documents uncovered by a human rights group, adding new scrutiny to Apple's human rights record in China. That story broke today or yesterday. The documents discovered by the Tech Transparency Project and shared exclusively with the Post detail how thousands of Uyghur workers were sent to work for Lens Technology and given a choice. They said, okay, you can either work in this factory or you can go back to the labor camp. Apple said the company has confirmed that Lens Technology has not, they denied it completely, has not received any labor transfers of Uyghur workers from Xinjiang. He said Apple earlier this year ensured none of its other suppliers are using forced Uyghur labor. Apple has zero tolerance for forced labor, looking for the presence of forced labor as part of every supplier assessment we conduct, including surprise audits. So Apple very aggressively defended its use and its practices and said there is no forced labor in the chain. It's a story though that keeps coming up, so we'll just keep following it, I guess.
And Apple is doing better than most any other large company that uses Chinese manufacturing. That said, they are absolutely required to be as transparent as they can humanly be with the public about how they use labor in China and how they make sure that they keep their supply chain as uncontaminated by slave labor as possible. So right. I have faith in Apple. I do believe that when they say that they conducted a sweep, that and that their routine rules and regulations block this sort of thing from happening. However, they are absolutely required, given the people they're dealing with, to keep making sure that they release these reports, that every time there's an accusation, they don't just get all huffy about it, but they say, here is why we looked into the specific allegation, here is what we found nothing, and here's the data that we turned up that demonstrated to our satisfaction that there is no forced labor being used in the production of any iPhone component. It's very, very tricky, but they have to do it.
And I'm open to hearing from both sides, but I have to say this reminds me a little bit of what happened with Greenpeace, where they because Apple's such a high-profile company and has such lefty customers, and at least here in California, that the Greenpeace made a lot of hay attacking Apple, putting them on their lists of the worst, and then all of a sudden, oh no, they're fine now. And I don't know what I don't know anything about the Tech Transparency Project. Certainly, it's important that this information come out if it's the case.
Yeah, this is a case. Well, I'll say that I don't want to say like by any means necessary, but whatever can get more information out about this, please do it. Yeah. If Apple has to file every report imaginable and we keep getting news about this, that's fine.
And I have absolute faith that Apple does not want to employ forced labor in any of its production.
Absolutely.
And would do anything to prevent that. They're not so profit-focused that they would say, well, sorry, we got to. That's just not the case.
Yeah, with Google is having some absolutely damnable crises with how they treat some of the people who work for them. Yes. And part of the problem is that clearly they see the problem as a PR problem when the news gets out. With Apple, I do believe that I'm absolutely certain that they don't believe this issue is a PR problem that has to be tamped down. They believe that it is an actual human rights problem that they want to not only do they want to have nothing to do with profiting from this practice, but they want to do everything that is humanly possible for a company to make sure that this does not happen under their watch. Yeah. So I have a lot of faith in Apple on that score.
And we will continue to make sure that they do the best they can because they want to and we want them to.
Yes.
Anything else? Let's see. There was a riot in India. Underpaid workers at an Apple-affiliated factory. They kept reducing the already low wages. So the factory workers rioted and took all the iPhones. Serves them right. I don't see anything of great import. What are we looking forward to in 2021? Here's a chance for you guys to think, sit back, not be exactly a Ming Chi Kuo, but
wonderful GIF of that dog in the burning room just sipping coffee saying everything's fine with a burly firefighter who grabbed it and was running with it out the door. And that is just all my hopes and dreams for 2021.
Please, firefighter, Rescue
poor dog,
us.
Poor Coffee, who thinks everything is fine, is being rescued.
Yeah. I think we all see the light at the end of the tunnel. The vaccine is rolling out. There are at least 2, maybe 3 coming soon. And I have to say, in what has been a very difficult year, Apple's done very well. I think there's a lot to look forward to. Believe it or not, with the Macintosh, this is going to be a very exciting year.
Leo.
Huh?
They're going to mini LED everything.
Oh, that's right. There is a rumor that there is a mini LED. I did not mention that. iPad Pro coming out in the spring.
And Macs.
And the Macs too. That will be very exciting. Yeah.
It's going to be fun. Like we said earlier, with the single Mac thing that the single Apple thing I'm most looking forward to is the first time that Apple says, okay, what if we don't care about power? We don't care about power consumption.
Yeah.
We don't even necessarily care so much about fan noise. Exactly how much butt can we spank on the AMD and the Intel fight with the most powerful Mac we've ever made? That's going to be something really, really entertaining to watch, and I hope I live long enough to see it.
Yeah.
128 core Mac Pro. Just drop that down.
No low power cores. Come on, that's room on the die. We could put more high power cores on.
And you get 4 low power cores, and then you get 120. 4 of the.
And we started the year saying, the show saying the year was a good year for tech companies in the stock market. Apple had 88% growth in its stock for 2020. Yeah. So if you bought Apple at the beginning of the year, and held it, congratulations.
It's similar to what Andy said earlier. I was always taught like you couldn't cover a company and hold their shares, and I always get angrier every year that I was trained that way. And I see finally like the U.S. government is like, maybe it'd be a good idea if Congress people and senators didn't get to own stock over it.
Well, if I ever do get a tattoo, it's probably one of the candidates is going to be just simply the number 12 7/8. That's the price that Apple was at when I was just like almost vibrating, like thinking that. But I know that I'm a print journalist, which means that I have no money. But I have $1,000, a couple of $1,000 that I was going to spend like on fun things over the next 3. I could buy Apple stock and just put it away and hold on to it. And oh my God. It was like, again, my strength is as the strength of 10 men because my soul is pure. Damn it.
My only way I get around that is my retirement funds. Some of them are in a basket of tech stocks. So I bought the technology market as a whole, knowing there's probably a little Apple in there, I imagine, and some other stuff that we cover.
Oh, I have mutual funds.
It's a mutual fund.
Never tell me what's in them. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
Just buy them and sell them. I just don't want to know because there'll be like cell phone companies, there'll be technology companies.
Yeah. It's stuff that but I don't manage it. It's a mutual fund. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with me investing in technology as a whole, right? That's kind of my whole life is invested in technology as a whole. Maybe it's actually a bad idea because I'm putting all my eggs in the technology basket, but I do feel like this has been a good year for technology. It's been a tough year because technology has also come under the scrutiny. Big tech has. But our company, the company we cover, Apple, of all the big tech companies, seems to be the cuddliest. And so it's a nice feeling to cover Apple.
I cannot believe Google is getting sued over the 30% before Apple did.
Isn't that ironic? All right. I think
not the greatest problem that Sundar Pichai is dealing with at this moment. It's again he is the dog with a coffee cup, and he can't even crack a smile.
As good as this year has been for Apple, it's as bad as it's been for Google, and it really just seems like Google just lost their way this year. They just, I have to say another company that's done very well this year is Microsoft. Not maybe as beautifully as Apple. And I do think there is certain irony at the year's end that Microsoft said, "Oh, and we're going to do our custom chip too. It's going to be an ARM chip. Yeah, we're going to do that. Yeah, we got that." As they always do. As they do that every time. You got an iPad? Oh, wait, we have this giant Surface tablet. This is like an iPad, only it's a coffee table size. Every single time
And Google's been making server chips on ARM for years and never hardly ever talks about them.
No, we don't want to. We're too tired. We don't want to talk about that. It's nap time. Yeah. All right, I am getting ready for some picks of the week because even though it's the end of the year, you don't get off the hook. Our picks of the week. Let's commence. And by the way, I should point out, it could be a media content. Andy knows that. You often pick opera.
Of course.
It could be anything. What is your pick of the week, Andy Anako?
My pick of the week, again, I forgot that we had a show today, but I did have one that I'd already bookmarked for a future show. It's an app called
Andy,
Hazel.
No one knew you forgot the show until you just admitted it.
Again, my strength is as the strength of 10 men, for my soul is pure.
He's too honest, folks.
So listeners, if I ever just randomly ask on Twitter if someone's willing to co-sign a car loan, again, honest as the day is long. Your money is as good as lost.
Back him, baby.
I will tell you exactly how I intend to not be able to pay that back. Anyway, but yeah, there's a interesting app called Hazel that I discovered recently. It's an automatic file manager sort of thing. Like imagine like the rules that you have on your email, where hey, if ever an email a message arrives from twit.com and it's the sender is Leo Laporte, pin that to the very, very top so I don't miss it, or send it over to this so I get a text message. What Hazel does is it does the exact sort of same thing for like a watched folder, so that if you create a folder you can create a folder then attach rules to it too. Anytime a file lands in this folder, here's what I want you to do with it. If the file name contains curly quotes, change it to straight quotes. If it is a JPEG that is smaller than 100 kilobytes, put it in this folder called social media downloads, image downloads. If it's more than a megabyte, put it into like photos from family and friends or whatever. On and on and on and on. All kinds of conditions you can put onto actions that should happen whenever it realizes that a file has been added to this specific folder. And it can be things as simple as, again, if it's a raw video file, send it to this server that I've got, or upload it to this place right here. Or it can be as complicated as including, run this Apple script and then proceed from this logic that happens right there. As a matter of fact, people who are into scripting languages will recognize that this is something you can do. You can attach a script to a watched folder, but this is not for people who understand scripting or want something that complicated. It really is something as simple as, okay, everybody in this family, here is a folder that just whenever you've got like a note or something that needs to be backed up, just copy it here, and then automatically it will be put onto like our family media server, and a copy of the picture will be sent to grandma, and you don't have to do anything but just make sure this gets copied into this folder. I've only been using it for a couple of days, but I've been kind of enjoying it. I think I've just scratched the surface of what it can do. I have not found yet something that I absolutely need a watched folder on my desktop for just now, but it seems like the sort of app that I will have on my hard drive, and then at some point, as I'm doing like just that numb sort of muscle memory thing I do every like Thursday at 4:22 p.m. when I realize that I can't see the backdrop on my wallpaper because I've got so many files on the desktop that I've simply dragged from here to there, and now it's time for me to manually put them where they need to go or process them. I feel as though, oh, that's right, I do have that wonderful Hazel app. I should create a Hazel action for this. Yeah,
this is it's interesting because you probably could do all of this yourself with Folder Actions, Automator, and AppleScript, but it's so much easier just to use Hazel. So I actually talked about it on my Folder Actions Hands-on Macintosh episode because I thought it was a good way for people to get into the idea of watch folders. And then if you need more capability, there's so much built into the Mac. This is an ancient macOS capability that lives on. And it's one of the many reasons I prefer macOS to any other operating system. There's just no analogous behavior elsewhere. I just really like it. Hazel's an excellent app.
The other thing I like about it is it's a very Mac app. It looks like a Mac app. It feels like a Mac app.
Well, it's M1 native, which we love, and it is Big Sur compatible. So now's the time. $42 for the Hazel 5, and then if you want a family pack for 5 users, it's $65. bucks.
And a free 2-week trial, of course. So I'm still in the trial.
Try before you buy, always. Renee Ritchie, pick of the week.
So this is just for fun because the chaps that come with the AirPods Max, they've been ludicrously, incredibly dunked on over the last few weeks, just in every way imaginable, because they really are. They are buttless chaps in every sense of the word. Yeah. And I just pretend they don't exist. They're like the Star Wars sequels or prequels to me. It's like in my universe, there isn't any, because I don't use cases for headphones. I have tons of AKG and Beats and Sennheiser and Bose, and I've never used the cases for them because I either wear them or I take them off and put them on a headstand thing. But I understand some people do. So especially when they want to travel and pack the headphones, they want them to be protected. So SF Bags has got the first announcement out the gate, the hottest of AirPods accessories, which is a case that you can put the entire AirPod, you can roast the whole thing inside the case if you want to travel with it, if you want to protect them.
You need
they
a
still
hard
don't
case.
Fold up, so it's still.
You need a hard case for these. I don't know why they didn't ship one.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a case person for again, I am not. I just leave mine.
Yeah, but
naked
if you took it on an airplane, you'd want a case, wouldn't you?
$550.
I just put it around my neck, and then it would do a carotid artery choke on me, and I'd fall unconscious and sleep really well.
This is a good company, though. I've had a lot of their stuff. They make good stuff. So. And it'll probably come before your AirPod Max if you haven't ordered yet.
You can buy it and put it on your desk and look at it longingly.
Oh, I've got the case.
And that's the nice thing about the Apple. Like, the Apple ecosystem is a cliche, but because they make so few products with so few form factors, companies are willing to invest in a lot of third-party things for them.
Yes.
Where, they might not if there was 18 different versions.
Yeah, I mean, these are
so
really
at least
nicely
you'll have,
made. Yeah. But there's they know there's going to be a market. There's somebody was dumb enough to pay $550 for the AirPods. I think we can get them on a $99 case.
$500 for a case.
Actually,
I don't know how much the case
you
is.
like your AirPod Max so much. I'm getting you're kind of swaying me, Renee. Watch out. Be careful.
They are perfect for someone like me because I'm not like
an audiophile.
I'm not that sensitive to audio, but I used to listen to MacBreak Weekly on the speaker from my Trio phone.
Yeah.
And that was fine for me, like an animal, like a monster.
Yeah.
But this, I hear things I've never heard before in mute, like the same thing. And I know I've heard them before in other really good headphones. I've just forgotten because it's been so long. But this is streaming off Apple Music or off an Apple TV or Disney Plus feed, like listening to The Mandalorian or some of the other, like some of the Marvel stuff or some of the Apple TV Plus stuff is ridiculously good with all that Atmos data that they can work with. It's amazing. So if you are all in, they're a really good experience.
I think they might be the right product for the time because you're going to be spending a few more months at home. It might be nice to have a nice pair of headphones, right? You owe it to yourself.
To tune out the family members that you're really growing a little bit tired of, but you can't say anything about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, I'm actually wearing something that I ordered a year ago. But in 2015, we had a very nice bunch of Austrians on the show, the new screensavers, from a company called MikMe, M-I-K-M-E. They were former AKG or maybe it was Audio-Technica engineers who really cared about microphones. And they made a really, I thought, interesting microphone design for the iPhone. It's a wireless microphone. They announced this last year, the MikMe Pocket, which is, if you look at it, it looks like a lavalier mic that you put on your lapel and something you put on your belt. Anybody who's ever worked in a studio has used these for years. But here's the difference. It pairs via Bluetooth to your iPhone, and then you can start the video and, move around, walk around. You can have a camera operator take the video. You can put your iPhone on a tripod, and the audio will stay close to you because you've got a microphone on your lapel. The problem, of course, with true wireless microphones, and we have used wireless lavs here in the studio, is in order to get something that's not going to get interference from the local Air Force base, you got to spend a few $1,000, really, right, John, to get a decent pair of wireless lavs. For $350, you get these. Now, they don't work the same way. This is not RF. What happens is the Bluetooth pairs to the phone, and as you're recording, sends the audio to the phone. Can't keep up because Bluetooth isn't fast enough. But over time, it will send the video as you continue to record, and then maybe a minute or two after your recording's done, it will finish up, and then it syncs up with the video, and you've got perfect audio. It also has built-in memory, so if it loses track of your phone, it will continue to record locally and then send it when you get close enough. The audio quality is excellent, and I think for people who, like me, perhaps are solo operators out in the field, this would be a really good way to do your videos, Renee, things like that. Now, I ordered this more than a year ago, saying, "Oh, this will be great. We could use the iPhone to shoot CES 2020 last year, the old CES." I just got it a couple of days ago, so I don't know if that's COVID or a long development cycle, or maybe they just forgot about me. It was a crowdsourced crowdfunding thing, so I didn't expect it anyway. How me and Kickstarter, but I am very impressed by the concept. There is one negative, which is in order to get the syncing to work, you have to use their MicMe video app. You actually shoot the video in their app, but it takes advantage of all the iPhone's features. I'm presuming I was able to shoot 4K 60 frame video and all that. I don't know if it's Dolby Vision HDR10, but I don't see why not. I think it's a good way to do, and most of the time you don't want to shoot that super high quality unless you're Marquez Brownlee for your YouTube video or the kinds of videos I do. It's adequate to do 1080p for me, for sure. 369 euros for the Lav and the Pocket. They do offer a more professional version of the Lav for $150 additional. But this is a standard mini XLR jack, so you can use, if you have an existing mini XLR lavalier microphone, which we have plenty of, you can always use that as well. You don't have to use their special mic. It's the base unit that's unique. And I ended up I think I bought the Pro bundle, which included a lot of clips and all sorts of stuff, and that was 500 euros. At the time, it was less than that because I crowdsourced it, and they said, you're going to get it a year later than everybody else. Anyway, it came, MicMe, and they're nice guys in Austria, so I wanted to give them a little plug. MIKME.com if you're looking for a way to do wireless audio for your iPhone videos without breaking the bank. I know $500 sounds like a lot of money, but honestly, it's a deal for wireless lav. Hey guys, I'm so glad I could spend the last show of 2020 with you.
Hey, yes.
Yeah, and I appreciate the time you've spent with us over the past few years. This show really lives and dies by your contributions, and they're always stellar and stunning. So I really appreciate your being here. And I'm glad you had a decent holiday, and I hope you have continued to have a good little time with New Year's Eve and New Year's. And we'll be back here next Tuesday and begin 2021 in fine style. Every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 2100. No. It's 1800 UTC. WGBH Boston, Mr. Andy Ihnatko next week. On a Thursday.
Yes. Thank you for the Twit super insulated hoodie is still holding up very, very
yes,
well.
That's a few years old.
Still my go. It's saving me a lot of money because it allows me to keep the thermostat at 60.
That's better than
and still be in cushy comfort.
Better than a tattoo. Just put that on your sleeve. And then thank you so much, Renee. Renee Ritchie is at youtube.com/Renee Ritchie. Hope you feel well and have a wonderful New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and we'll see you next week on Mac Break Weekly.
You too, Leo.
I want to thank Mick Baylog. Mick sent us 100 pounds of cheese.
Oh, big block of cheese? Big block of cheese?
No, a variety of blocks. Mick lives in Ohio, in southern Ohio, where cheese is aplenty. He sent us some summer sausage and some cheese, and we've divvied it out among all of the staff. So thank you very much. Because as everyone knows, is a real tradition of melted cheese on New Year's Eve. Whatever culture you grew up in, you got to melt some cheese. The smoked kinds.
A missed opportunity, though. Your name actually is Leo, so you could have Leo's. Everyone in front of the desk. Leo's giving his big block of cheese speech.
I could do that, Leo McGarry. That's right. Ready for the big block of cheese.
There was a big block of cheese, and all were invited to come to partake of it. Since then,
one of the best episodes. And there is one of our serious fans. To my knowledge, there are only 3 twit tattoos in existence. Do you remember whose name this was, John? If you're still around and you still have the tattoo, let me know. There is, of course, F and Done, Jason Cleanthus, who has his twit tattoo on his wrist. And then that third twit tattoo, no one will ever know where that third twit tattoo lies. Stop pointing at me. It's a secret. Well, actually,
some say that twit tattoo still roams the flatlands today.
It's funny because I always, I say, oh, I hate tattoos. And I realize, oh, my God, I have one. And but I know it's in a position where the sun don't shine, and the only person who ever sees it is my wife, who never fails to comment upon it and saying, "Oh, that damn twit tattoo." Thank you.
Ink Master sometimes does a cover-up challenge, so you can get like a flaming skull riding a hot rod. Like
it would be a ladybug they would have to tattoo over it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We will see you next week. But now, I'm sure you're not working, but if you are, break time is over. It's time to get back to work or something. You know what? I have a resolution for 2021. I need a new show close. Let's come up with a new way to end this show. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.